a spring in your step. There is a twinkle in your eye.
I can throw a rhyme down for you real quick. Yes, they call me Thrill. They say that I'm the man. You disagree, how could you? Let me make you understand.
Should we bring her on the show? Can anybody find me? And there she is.
Fresh as some bread, pulled right from the oven. When you feel rejected, you get some my loving.
Take on me.
She looks wonderful. Mom looks amazing.
Somebody to. Okay, more bugger off now. I've got to show it to you.
Like that?
Joseph Jaffe, ladies and gentlemen.
You just made the new intro of the show.
A self-described teacher at heart, Moshe works to uplift people and reduce suffering by helping good organizations and their leaders put love, or Amare, to work without sacrificing profits. From everything he learned through consulting for some extraordinary people and companies, teaching many brilliant and hardworking students, and going on his own spiritual journey, he wrote the Amare Wave and refined his focus to what it is now, uplifting business with the energy of love. And as the perfect context setter, please watch this little clip.
Hi, I'm Moshe Engelberg, and I wrote this book, The Amare Wave. I wrote it to reduce suffering in business and from business. What I found over the years as a consultant and a teacher in many universities is that a lot of people in business are unhappy, and business is treated like war. We have to crush the competition, we have to capture market share. It's rather predatory, and there's no need to be warlike in business. Companies can put love to work and be as or even more successful. I start the book with this great story. I was walking on the beach with my cousin Ginger. This was at La Jolla Shores, a beach I've walked on hundreds, probably thousands of times. And she knows about the book. I'm updating her on the progress, and she said, how do you keep inspired? What keeps you motivated? And how do authors do this? And I said, well, whenever someone tells me they're writing a book, making an album, or starting a new business, I immediately give them $20 and I say, you sold your first one, you sold your first book, you sold your first CD, and something incredible happens. They light up and it's like, oh my God, this is real. Someone paid me for a book that I'm writing, for the CD I'm creating. So I'm telling Ginger this story as we're walking on this stretch of beach. And out of the corner of my eye, I see something on the ground over there on the sand. And it looks like money. I'm not paying much attention. And then I figure, well, there's other people walking in between us. They'll probably go pick that up. And we get closer, and I notice the people don't pick up the money. They walk right by. And I'm thinking, well, it's probably $1 that washed up. We keep walking. We get to where the bill is. I look down. At the edge of the water, inches from where the wave is hitting the sand, is a folded up, perfectly clean $20 bill. I look at Ginger, I look up, I think, how does this happen? I pick it up with immense gratitude. I say thank you to the universe. I call this story The Universe, my first customer. I keep that $20 bill in a book by my bed and see it every night as a reminder that this book was meant to be. I believe we all get messages, we all get guidance about whether we're on the right path or not, what to do, what not to do. May you hear your messages, may you pay attention, and may it serve you well. So that's what this book is about. I hope you'll pick it up and check it out, and that it'll make your life better and give you and your company a better way to prosper.
Moshe, welcome to the show.
Hi, Joseph. So good to be here.
I don't know. There was a weird little echo coming, but maybe that echo is the resonance of the message through the universe.
It must be that. I like that explanation.
I love that whole idea of the universe as your first customer. I mean, it's just what a beautiful message, and what a great idea. The minute somebody tells you that they're thinking of writing a book, you already become their first customer. It's just something that is so almost, it's like an aha moment.
It is. And the reaction of people is really extraordinary. Like they are stunned and they go like this and start to, but it's not done. But I say, you're on your way. You sold one. It just makes it real in a very powerful way. And it's such an easy thing to do, a simple way to have a huge impact.
So now I have to decide what I'm going to call you today. Do I call you Moshe Engelberg or do I call you Dr. Moshe Engelberg? Which one do you prefer?
You can call me Amare Moshe. How about that?
Amare Moshe. Well, you know, the beauty of being the producer, the director, the actor, the host is that we get to make changes in real time, and we're very flexible, because isn't that the whole point, right? About being able to pivot and be open to experimentation. So from now on, you are Amare Moshe. Moshe, you know, now I went a bit Yiddish with you as well.
Yes. Should we continue in Yiddish or keep going in English?
You know, I think unlike Sacha Baron Cohen, right, who in the movie Borat, basically his entire Kazakh language, in fact, for people that don't know, he's speaking fluent Hebrew, which of course is just hysterical. Well, let's see who's watching today and some comments. Tom said, "Thank you, Tom. Great seated soliloquy. I stood up for it." Well, you know, you went against the grain of a seated soliloquy. And Rini, who was wonderful guest on Monday, she said, "I love what you're saying, but my eyes are trained on that shirt." Not all comments are good, because Stephen says he thought I lost a bet. And Seth updates that Nick Westergaard is Mr. Scrappy. So I guess we'll figure that out. But let's focus on you, Amare Moshe. David says, "Wow, uplifting video. Loved that story." And Bob is watching while driving, which is probably not a good idea. But now you can see how the show runs. The show runs on love. You know, it is the love that I have for the show. It is the love that I have for my guests, and it's the love that the audience have for one another and for you as well. I'm sure you will sell at least one copy of your book today.
Will that be you?
Damn straight. As I also sign up for your newsletter, and we'll, you know, tell people. Look, may as well tell people now to sign up for the Amare Wave Wednesday newsletter, and that's how you do it. But we're going to get to that in a moment. Let's do our fun facts about you, because you're a very interesting man. And one of the fun facts about you is that you grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. So I didn't know whether that meant you were on the show, you were, you know, a crew member, or perhaps it was that you literally grew up in the neighborhood.
I lived on a street in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called Beechwood Boulevard, about one block, maybe 6 or 7 houses from where Mr. Rogers lived. I was at his house, played football with his kids. I always regretted not wearing a sweater into his house so I could practice being Mr. Rogers. But yeah, I grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. So
you actually grew up with him?
Yeah, I can't say we were the best of friends or saw each other a whole lot, but I did live nearby. So yeah, that's my claim to fame.
But he was a man that, you know, in a way, when I see you now and I experience you and what you focus on, there's a very, very strong connection and parallel in terms of this peaceful, this open, this warm approach. I mean, he was all about love.
He was totally about love. And that is a very high compliment, Joseph. So I'm taking that in. I appreciate that. And I do try to emulate his way. He had a very, an energy that got through to people and broke through a lot of resistance. Instead of fighting, he took the path of love. And I define love simply as energy that uplifts and connects. And when kids or even adults watch Mr. Rogers or saw movies about him, you can sense that energy, that uplifting energy, that sense of connection. Beautiful. So yeah, I think it's something we can all practice and put to work.
It's an interesting concept when you talk about love being an energy as opposed to an emotion. Or the thing about energy, I suppose, is you can't really keep it inside you, can you? Like, energy wants to transfer. Energy, needs to, needs to escape. I mean, I don't know much. I know you called me a physicist earlier, but why did you call me a physicist again? I can't remember.
It was some brilliant. Oh, it was about, you talked about how relative time is, how 4 days seems like a long time, but some have been waiting 4 years or 40 years. I said, that's the theory of relativity. You're a physicist.
All right. So, and we'll come back to that in a moment as well. Well, here's something else about you that is very peaceful and in keeping with this beautiful image, which is you love, how do I even pronounce it? Kirtan music?
Kirtan. I'm laughing at the images you created. Yeah. Kirtan music. I do.
Well, I was actually listening to some earlier, and I loved it. It's beautiful. What are the origins of kirtan? Is it Tibetan? Is it Indian?
The kirtan I know of is Indian in origin, and there's been a version that's come to the United States, come to the West, that melds Eastern and Western influences. So there's some that's in an ancient language, Sanskrit. There's some that's in English, and there's some that goes back and forth. And basically, it's a chanting of mantras or prayers or high vibration stuff that is so uplifting, and it feels really good. It's gone to a point. My wife and I, that's what we have on almost all the time, and our family teases us and stuff, but that's okay. So we can choose what to surround ourselves with and what we take in. When I listen to angry music, one of our kids listens to a lot of what I'll call angry rap. Not all rap is angry by any means, but some of what he listens to is. And to me, it creates a negative feelings. Why do I want to surround myself? Why would I choose to bring that in? So the kirtan is consistent with this idea of love, and it's very uplifting and engaging and inclusive. So I encourage your many listeners and viewers to check it out.
Well, they would check it out, but they've been too busy ordering your book. So you've made at least 2 sales, and
Wow.
then you'll get the third with me. And Leslie Laredo is here. She said she just joined. But Leslie, do not call this a call. I will ban you from the after show if you do that. We have this little pet peeve where people say, "Oh, I love the call," or "That was a great Zoom." I'm like, this is Corona TV. It is a daily streaming show. Do not call it a call, Leslie. I'm just kidding. They know what buttons to press. But it was the perfect way to end this week, because it's been a stressful week and a momentous week, and I really could not have thought of a more perfect person to help us. After Lodro was speaking about meditation, and you kind of coming up with this. It's almost the interesting bridge, the peace, the harmony, the ability to transcend the mundane, the mediocre, the day-to-day, but apply it to our personal or professional lives. So I have a few more just to embarrass you just a little bit more, which is, Mike Myers was the love guru, but I think you might be the original or the new love guru with respect to your writing as well.
You are funny. You are funny and a physicist, both.
Yeah. Listen, they just get progressively worse. But let's I want to get like straight into it. I want to talk about this concept. I want to talk about your book, and I have lots of questions, like starting off with why Amare? Why not call it love? Why did you go for this Italian word?
Yes. Well, the book started with other names, including variations, Putting Love to Work. What was the other? Making Business Love, a little more provocative. And then working with a friend of mine, kind of a thought partner named Gunther Wessels in the early days of creating this book, he said, how about Amare from Latin? And I like that and chose to go with it for a couple reasons. One reason is the word love has so much baggage attached to it, both positive and negative. And I'm noticing the beautiful red heart behind your head that's always there. And so love elicits images of hearts and Valentine's Day and struggles and all kinds of things. And Amare's cleaner in that it has less attached to it right now. So I don't want people to reject the idea because they reject the word. And I chose to use the word Amare. It's also a principle in branding and positioning to say, let's create a new category. And so this is, I define love as energy that uplifts and connects. It's not meant to be soft and gushy. And even though I'm from Southern California and I'm wearing beads and listen to kirtan music, and where I have hair, it's getting a little long. In spite of all that, this is not kind of a mushy idea, or it's not naive. Well, if we just love each other, everything will be better. It's based in fact. There's a lot of empirical evidence that organizations that put love to work do better financially and otherwise. So to come back to your question, I called it Amare because I was more expansive. I thought would be a larger universe for people to come in. And I added the word wave because it's a movement. It is happening. I'm not inventing anything new. I'm just naming it and connecting dots in a different way that I hope will make it easier for people to feel like they can and want to be a part of.
And I went and looked a little bit closer, and I was like, yes, indeed. First, I thought it was just, the Greek that you see in advertising, ipso lorem doctorum, etc. And then I was like, no, this is most definitely not Italian. It is in fact Latin. So my bad. But there actually is something very interesting about it. I think it was on yesterday's after show. We spoke about, I think it was the point was that Russian, I think it was Russian, has two words for the color blue. And so depending on, so there's a perspective there. There is the ability to create more depth and meaning and layers and dimensions to something that we might oversimplify. And I think that's what you've done. That's how I interpret what you've done with Amare, which is to take a different perspective and a viewpoint, and to use your words, make it slightly less gushy.
That's my technical language. Yes. And I wanted to be rigorous with what it meant. So my background, my doctoral work was all about be rigorous, define your concepts well, be clear about what you're talking about. And that it uplifts and connects rather than calling it a feeling or an emotion. And it can refer to a lot of things, but I think in life where it's all about energy. And
yeah, I mean, the minute that you say the word energy, there's a whole bunch of things that just explode. Let me start off with the first one that draws on the art and the craft and the science of gush, or gushonomics, if you will, which is in business people, they struggle with ephemeral, with intangible, with soft. They need everything to be hard data, metrics, measurement, known, left brain. How do you build that bridge between the gush of love and the ability to drive performance and results in a meaningful way?
Well, there's a few ways of doing it. One is I simply ask the question, do you love your customers and do they love you back? And what you want them to? Don't you want your customers say, yeah, that's a great company. I love giving them my business. You should too. Of course, everybody would. So if we approach it from that angle, then somehow love is fitting in business. And it's a counter to the idea, kind of the hard-nosed, no, love doesn't belong in business. Well, it totally does. It totally does. It can be the operating system, so to speak, of business, I believe. And businesses prosper as a result. So there is the objection, and there's the love and business go together. And I think of in The Godfather is saying, okay, Sonny, it's something to the effect of, this is business, don't take it personal. And I say the opposite. Business is totally personal. We don't separate our humanity or our personhood when we do business. we have the capacity to do that, to compartmentalize in that way. And that's where things go awry. And that's one of the things that's led to the divisiveness in our country, the ability for people to be ethical and moral and upstanding, but then go cheat in business or lie or whatever it is. So the human capacity to hold two ways of being at the same time that are in conflict and move forward on both is a big challenge. And the opportunity is for us to be in alignment in our words and actions and our thoughts. And like, I could be more in alignment with the question you asked, which already left me, but I hope I'm answering.
No, I mean, I expected nothing less from this conversation. I have 1,000 questions there, and I'm trying to hold on to them and just keep them, and and just capture them, and damn it, there's nothing left there. But I'll let people like Joey bring us back. He said love does indeed belong in business. And it's funny because then Rini said, uplifts and connects. This is very similar to how I'm hearing teen athletes talk about love in relation to their teams. It strikes me, in next week's newsletter. And by the way, if you guys want to subscribe to my newsletter, you can. All you got to do is go to josephjaffe.com/subscribe, and I will reflect on Moshe today. That's what I've been doing in my newsletters. But you know how I sign off now in my newsletters? But I just say, love you guys.
Oh, sweet.
Saying, I almost feel like it's almost taboo to use that word, even in our vernacular, in our business lexicon.
It is. I have a good friend, Neville. He's an executive at a large credit union here in San Diego, and for years he's been signing his emails, "Love Neville." Simple as that, "Love Neville." And recognizing some people might be uncomfortable, some might like it, but we need to loosen up a little bit and quit pretending that business is this whole different entity that has no relation to who we are, how we live. It's this crazy idea. So it's time to put that myth to rest and recognize love as the new necessity in business. And to circle back to what you were asking earlier, Joseph, about people who are reluctant or resistant to the idea of love in business, they can call it grilled cheese. Doesn't matter. Again, I don't want the word to get in the way of the idea being embraced. And I would ask them, I would push back in this kind of way. I'd say, so any sports teams you really love? I'd say, yeah, I love the Pittsburgh Steelers, or I love so you feel love toward this sports team or toward In-N-Out Burgers or whatever it is. So even the most hardened executive will admit love to some business. So again, we often contradict ourselves. Everybody loves something, some business, some organization, whether they make hamburgers or play football or whatever it is. So why would we not want to be in that same energy? And if we're not in the energy of love, then fundamentally we're in the energy of fear. And that's, again, what we see playing out in our world right now, in this country and even globally, that fear is an incredibly powerful motivator, ultimately a destructive one, in my view, but nonetheless very powerful. So there's an opportunity to create, I'll call it now, an Amare bridge. And in the beginning of the show, you talked about what side of the fence, regardless of referring to the election, regardless of what side of the fence you're on. Mm. I think one of the problems is we see the division as a fence. And it's typically hard to get through a fence. So I think we need to reconceive of that idea of the division. Maybe it's more like a river. It ebbs and flows. It goes in different directions. There's more flexibility. It's easy to go from one side to the other. But we've become more hardened in this divisiveness. And that's what I think we have the opportunity in front of us to heal, and that business can be the greatest agent of that healing.
There are so many ways to build on that concept of the fence. But in my defense, Mine is a white picket fence of suburbia where you can see through, and there's a nice little gate. Maybe there's a gate in the middle that you can walk through. But I do. In all seriousness, I love that idea of being able to think about the line is not really a line at all, or it shifts, or maybe it's just it's just completely arbitrary and contrived. Why should there even be one? I even think of the Zen, of yin and yang, which is, why does it even have to be a line? Why can't it just be curves and and flow?
Yes, and in that symbol of the yin and the yang, there's a little bit of the white and the black, a little bit of the black and the white. They're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, I love that.
No,
That'll be our new symbol for our two-party system in America.
Wouldn't that be terrific? There was another point that I wanted to make. It's interesting because even with people that are not used to or comfortable showing emotions, and even if you think about the hardened fan, they would easily be able to say, I love, the Steelers, right? Or I love the Patriots. They might even say, I love Tom Brady, but they wouldn't necessarily say to Tom Brady, I love you. So it almost seems like we're very comfortable using the word when it comes to inanimate or groups or in an impersonal context. But when it's one person to another, it suddenly takes on a more gushy look and feel.
Yes. Well, there's an intensity that goes with it, with two people looking at each other and saying, I love you. We think of that as for romance or kind of a different kind of love that we save for our loved ones, typically family members. And that's part of our restrictive culture. But again, I don't want people to get caught up in saying, oh shit, now I have to tell people at work I love them. I don't want to do that. And no, you don't. There's no need to do that. But it's that uplifting and connecting. If you feel that energy, that's what I call love. You can call it a ham sandwich. It doesn't matter.
Well, I wouldn't call it a ham sandwich because it isn't kosher, but I was much more comfortable with the grilled cheese approach.
I thought you might be. And we don't want to mix the ham and cheese. That makes it even worse.
But at the end of this interview, I'm definitely going to say I grilled cheese you, Moshe. I might even say I ham sandwich you. So it's all good. We'll get into the business aspect in 1 second, but before we talk about the hardcore business in this environment we're living in, and I'm really referring to COVID. Remember COVID, guys? COVID and where we've all had to live in this virtual world. Well, one of the things that was always easy to do decades ago, even, or maybe as recent as a few years ago, is we could stop looking at our emails at 5 p.m., 9 to 5. We could leave our work at the office and we'd be forced to leave our personal affairs at the house. And now it's completely blurred, right? We're working from home, but even so, with a smartphone, it's a complete blur. And it's always been apparent to me that it's not it's destructive if you take your work home with you, and it's also can be destructive if you take challenges in your home and bring it into the workplace. And yet the genie's out the bottle. So how does professional and personal love factor into this blurring in this reality of COVID? How do people compartmentalize?
Well, it's challenging, and COVID has presented a lot of what I'll call opportunities to do this and to go inward and make choices between priorities and spending time and saying, is this separate or is it not? So for example, we can choose every day to be done with work and not look at our phones at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. And that's a choice. That meets a particular need. When we don't do that and we keep checking our email and text and stuff, that's saying my need to keep up with that is greater. I prioritize that need over the other one. I think one of the most valuable gifts and lasting, enduring gifts that Judaism has made, or at least popularized in civilization, is the idea of a Sabbath. And maybe there's other groups that can be credited with it as well initially. So regardless of its origin, the idea of saying, let's take a break to refuel and disconnect from everyday stuff and say there is sacredness in this world. But if I'm looking at my friggin' phone all the time, I'm not going to feel it. I'm just not going to get there. So that idea of a Sabbath, whether it's Friday night to Saturday night, or whether it's on a Sunday or on a Tuesday morning, even if it's for an hour, I told my kids when they were in college, I said, take a Sabbath whenever during the week you do, even for an hour. Maybe you'll have a ritual, you'll light a candle, or you'll be on the beach, or do whatever it is, but recognize you can step out of your everyday work and connect with something bigger than yourself. So I would say to people, as I say to myself, you are not your work. You are not your job title. You are far more than that. That is one way you express yourself and put your gifts to work. That you are far more than that. And practicing it and having the discipline to turn it off and compartmentalize in that way, I think is so important. And we need to popularize that. I think millennials, that's my kid generation, are more open to, even though they grew up with this technology, maybe more open to that because there's a more apparent desire for that balance in life.
The one thing that is obvious to me is the ability to unplug and refuel, because even this concept of brand love, as they call it in from a marketing standpoint, or even a love that a customer has for us or that we have for them during this time of COVID, this was definitely not the opportunity to sell to our customers. It was the opportunity to help them. It was the opportunity to listen to them. And so I think just even the refuel is almost inextricably part of this new philosophy or paradigm to love.
Yes. And what if business leaders kept that mindset of our focus is helping our customers, not selling? That's how to sell more. It's not, okay, we got to hustle, we got to meet these sales goals, we got to hit our quarterly numbers. It's, we want to help. Business exists to make people's lives better. Any business started to solve a problem that was getting in the way, and that's how business provides value to society. But we forget that and we think business exists to make money. It does not. That's a byproduct, a critical byproduct and a necessary byproduct. But it's not why business exists. So if we remember that, we can take from this pandemic like your show will last well beyond this pandemic. And it's we take the idea, you started this show to uplift people. And if we have that mindset, that's what will make business great, and we'll realize the potential of business to be a huge change agent in our world.
I totally agree. And I think the word everyone is going to hear me mentioning this word a lot more often, which is we capitalism versus me capitalism. And this ability to really just recognize, we've spent so much time on the show, fantastically so, talking about conscious capitalism and this higher power and this higher order. But to go back to what we're talking about, this idea of we need to almost, the Sabbath, whether it's the professional Sabbath or the spiritual Sabbath, is designed to reduce that intensity, I guess, that constant barrage of stimulus, where we're so, I suppose, in the flow, in a bad way, where we don't have the time to stop, to pause, to look up, to look around, to take stock, and ask some of these questions. And I think you have this fantastic question that it's not what Jesus do, right? It's not that one. It's not WWJD.
Right.
It's WWLD. What would love do?
Yes, it's the title of a book I started writing when I realized the power of the question, which I read in a really mind-blowing book called Conversations with God. It's not for religious people, it's for everyone. And in that was the notion that the fundamental question for all situations is, what would love do? So I put that in the business context and laying out different scenarios that you have a startup, you're running out of money, you think you have to let go of employees, what would love do? And the answer is not, well, keep your employees on for as long as you can because that'll help them. It might be you let them go so you can keep your vision alive, but you do that in an uplifting way, in an honest and transparent way. So you can imagine all the situations where that question can be posed. When I'm making a choice for president, I can say, what would love do? And so it's a very simple mnemonic or mantra that we can use to root ourselves in the power of love if we choose to live our lives that way, and to make sure our decisions are in alignment. And they won't always be. So when they're not, we learn from it. We say, that was not in alignment with love. What happened? And what a way to live.
So I want to go back to that because and understand it a little bit. First of all, the example of the startup, the idea of what would love do, because there's the concept of tough love.
Yes.
And sometimes you do things out of love. It's almost the analogy or the adage of do the right thing even if it's the hardest thing. Make a decision motivated out of love. Would that be a use case of this in practice?
Totally. And I'd say especially when it's difficult. And so it's like raising kids. If my kids are asking for a lot of candy, it's easy to say yes, but that's not coming from love. That's coming from a weakness. I'm not willing to hold a healthy boundary. So holding boundaries is love, sometimes tough love. And people in leadership positions need to do that all the time. But sometimes the rationale for their boundary is, we can't do that because we'll lose money. It's boiled down to money. And a much greater guide, I think, is this question about what would love do.
Give me a few more examples, because some of the comments that I'm looking at, for example, Karen actually was commenting on what Rini was talking about, which is, wait, let's go back. So Rini said, I've seen this, but people haven't seen it. Businesses should step up and into the breach that really makes lives better on a bigger scale. Fixing Flint water is an example I use. And I think Karen was following up saying, really, that tends to fall into the mission of NGOs or nonprofits or agencies supporting governments, which makes this concept exciting. How much of this is this idea of capitalism in partnership with the conscience, with love, versus something that might be bucketed into you need to send that to the CSR department, right? The corporate social responsibility department. Sounds like a good thing. We could get a good press release out about it, but that's not necessarily part of the prime directive of this organization.
Yes, and that's a possible outcome where this will be seen as a PR thing. Yeah, let's do this love thing. We'll call ourselves an Amare Wave company, and it'll get us some good coverage and it'll help people feel good. But it's empty, and we don't want that. We don't want this situation where businesses slough off their responsibility and say, well, yeah, that only nonprofits should do that, or that's an NGO job. I don't think that's what your listener was saying. I'm pointing out that that could be a response, but that separates, that compartmentalizes and separates business and says business is excused from this idea of putting love to work because they're all about making money. That's what led to this, I think, was a significant factor in the recession that we experienced 10, 12 years ago. And the whole idea of they're too big to fail, to me, is a crazy idea. If something is failing, we let it fall apart, and then we build something new. We can learn from other cultures and other religions. Like in Hinduism, there's a lot of deities, and one of them is Shiva, the god of destruction. And there's the idea that we have a god of destruction, a god of creating, and a god of sustaining, and all have their place in the cycle. In the West, we tend to not allow destruction enough. And if we don't allow destruction, we're maintaining broken things. So if something's broken, we let it be broken, and that makes space for new creation. I think, and this may be a little controversial, if we take a grand view of the perspective of, say, hundreds of years, and we look at the current administration, there's been a lot of destruction that's happened. And a lot of it's caused a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and some call it horrific. And think, how can that be? How can we have even more of this? If we step back, we might say maybe some of that destruction was necessary to wake us up, to get our electorate involved, to get people off their butts and to engage and say, yes, I care about this. I'm going to be a part of this. I'm going to do my part as a citizen. So I don't mean that as an excuse or a rationale. I'm saying it's one of the outcomes of this in the long run, that destruction makes space for creation. Personally, I feel like we've had enough. It's time to move into the creation and the healing phase. And sometimes that's how it goes.
The idea of destruction is something that I'm very familiar with. And of course, there's the whole thinking about creative destruction. It's a very natural, needed, necessary part of business life, part of innovation.
Yes.
And often, and quite frankly, we can bring it all the way back to evolution itself. Not everybody makes it. Not everybody survives. Not everybody thrives. So the idea of necessary destruction is important. But I guess going back to this idea of there is love as an energy that transfers, that, by your definition, that uplifts, right, and connects. What is the absence of love called?
I call it fear. And so I don't think there's a vacuum in which there is nothing. There's always energy moving. That's how we live. It's this vibration, and this might sound a little woo-woo as I understand it. The energy of love vibrates at a higher level. So if you think about how you feel when it feels good, there's a feeling inside I will call a vibration, a vibrational level that's higher, and it's expansive. The energy of fear vibrates at a lower level. Fear tends to tighten us, it diminishes us. If people think of something fearful, if your viewers and listeners want to do it, they can think of something fearful and immediately feel their breathing reduce, body constrict, tightening, and it's not a good feeling. That's a lower vibration energy. If you think of something that makes you feel love, there's an openness, and I feel my heart open, my breathing is bigger, and so on. So I think it's useful to not oversimplify, but think in terms of those opposing energies. And every moment we can choose.
One of the saddest endings when you think about love or a relationship, you'll hear the phrase, sometimes love isn't enough. does that apply in a, do you agree with that statement? And how does that exist in a professional sense? Would that be the ability to close the doors of a company, to use that example from earlier?
Well, a couple of things. When I hear that, I think that more in terms of drama and story that explains a failed relationship. I love that person, it just wasn't enough. That's not how I think of love. In the context of business, where that does apply is the idea that it would be naive to think if I start this business or run this business with love, that's all I need. No, that's not true. You need a solid foundation and the essentials in place: sufficient capital, the right people, good ideas, a value proposition that resonates, and so on. So there's lots of businesses, mom and pop shops, for example, yoga studios, that don't last long. There's a lot of love, but there's not the other essentials in place. So love is not sufficient to be successful in business, but it's that energy that makes it better and amplifies having the right business model, the right people, the right capital, and so on.
I love those thoughts. Love those thoughts. I just keep emphasizing. I love the fact that I'm saying love a lot. Maybe it's this idea of grounded love, or love with purpose, love with vision. Love with that North Star, love with direction. We're also getting some really cool comments here. Tom said, love is expansive. Yes. Fear is constrictive. David said, fear is the opposite of love. So true openness is the answer. And Seth kind of plays right into your hand. And I'll go back to our beautiful Amare Wave. Actually, maybe that one's a little bit better for us. He said, so love could be a wave, like light and gravity. Is that? Yes, totally.
And one reason I called my book the Amare Wave, the word wave, was to recognize that there is this movement and this collective energy that's building. So my hope for this show is it'll grow it even more. So we're looking for ambassadors who want to take this forward. I help people do that. There's others who do that too, in different forms. The important point is companies and leaders and individuals get on board with this idea and say, I commit to putting love to work. And my book tells how to do that. It lays out a framework and so on. Again, the desire to have that kind of energy in your life, to feel uplifted and connected, that's what's at the heart of this. And yes, it can be a wave, and a huge wave that can really transform our society. In fact, it's my belief that business is the social force most likely to make a huge transformation happen in our world, in our lifetimes.
You are watching the one, the only Amare Moses himself. He is leading us out from slavery to freedom. He may not be allowed to enter the promised land, but you are our guide and our Sherpa, and we are hearing colors. We are seeing sounds. Going back to Brian Murarescu and the Immortality Key, and the fact Oregon has just legalized psychedelics. It's all good on Corona TV. I'm synthesizing the last 2 weeks of my life. But Moshe, your book, I'm looking forward to being at least sale number 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link where you can actually purchase this into the show notes. So I've just saw into the comments, which I've just done over there. We're going to continue the conversation in our Zoom after show. But one thing I've been doing with all of my guests, certainly this week, this unbelievably momentous week, is asking the 4. It's a different 4. It's not 4 letters, but it's a 4-worded question. How do we heal?
We start by each of us looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. If we don't have self-love, it's very hard to generate love for others. There's not a well to draw from. So that's how we start. And then we continue by recognizing, regardless of the outcome of this election, regardless of what happens, we can be the same. We can be ourselves. We are not those events. And we have the capacity to raise the vibration, grow the wave. If everyone watching the show does that, generates that self-love and makes that commitment to put love to work, that's huge. And that is our path of healing.
I would imagine as we wind down that you've done countless. You're a global keynote speaker. You conduct numerous workshops. I would imagine you've been in front of some pretty tough audiences, skeptical, crusty, set in their ways. I would love for you just to share one quick story about a reluctant CEO or client and how they went through this process and what happened on the other end.
Sure. Let me think of which one I want to tell.
The names and the faces and the companies have been changed to protect the guilty.
Yes. Well, I think of when I was developing the ideas for this book, and I interviewed a lot of people, and I'm thinking of one person in particular who I thought was, who I knew to be fairly conservative in their views and in their politics, and kind of what I would consider, and excuse my stereotype, but an old white guy CEO, and all about money and so on. And when I told him these ideas about love and business, something shifted just for a moment. It was he almost teared up a little bit, and I saw him swallow, and I knew it got through. And then a moment later, he put his arms like, yeah, well, and came up with all these objections. Well, what about this? What about EBITDA and so on? But I knew from that even with the most hardened, crusty executive, that there's a thirst for this. It's like being in the desert and having no water, and then suddenly a drop of water appears, and it's so refreshing. We say, yes, we want more, even if in our minds we try to fight and resist it and go without it. Yeah, I don't need that. I'm tougher than that. So that was an initial really powerful experience of seeing that even in the most hardened business person, there's a receptivity to this and a softening that is incredibly healing and very validating. So that told me, yes, you are on the right track. Do this.
The idea of even the hardened exterior softening over time is the same as the big boulder, right? The giant boulder. The water runs around the boulder, and over time that boulder becomes a rock, becomes a stone, becomes a pebble, becomes sand. That is the power of love in action. It is the power of Amare Moses in action. I think it's a great time to be in the love business and the business of love. I appreciate you coming in, and I appreciate the fact that you're going to be spending a little bit more time with us in our Zoom after show. So please join us, bit.ly/Corona TV after show. We got to end with a quote. It's an easy one. It's an easy one, and very famous lyrics from a very famous song. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. Start off every morning after you've meditated, thanks to Lodro. Look at yourself in the mirror and find that self-awareness and that self-love, and then don't keep it inside you. We'll call Moshe to help you if you need the help, but then go and spread it to many people, and spread a little bit of love in the world. So Moshe, thank you so much for your time. I'll just flash up very quickly a few ways for people to get hold of you. Moshe Engelberg on Instagram, on Twitter. Please sign up for his newsletter, for the Amare Wave Wednesday newsletter. That's mosheengelberg.com/blog. Buy the book. Find out more about him at mosheengelberg.com.
Yeah, get in touch with me. I will get back to you. And thank you for doing the show. You are building this wave in a big way. Much appreciated.
You're very welcome. I couldn't do it without, quite literally, I couldn't do it without you. So, as Chuck Norris would say,
You are Chuck Norris approved.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.